Hello, everybody. Welcome to Home Inspection Matters. I'm a whooped Yon Lucas after a busy week, and got Brian Long. What's going on, Brian?
Nothing much, man. It's I feel like we're getting to be on camera a lot this week, considering this is our second episode we're recording this time for us. But it was kind of fun to sit back and yesterday record with you during the day
Yep.
for a future podcast that's coming out.
Be on the lookout because it'll be interesting. It's coming from a very good source. I have to thank Brian for arranging that. I was kind of impressed that they contacted us, so keep an eye out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we've just been kind of hacking our way through the content and having fun, and it was still fun doing a cast with somebody who does it weekly also has been doing it for a couple years. So,
Yeah, well, it was one thing he said that I found very interesting, which was 1% creates content, 99% consumes it.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think part of the reason, too, I'm enjoying doing this and talking to people is, um, reading forums in Facebook and how to interact with other home inspectors or what real estate agents are posting. There, it gets a little unfiltered at times. There's just so many. You read the comments and it becomes a little agitating. This to me is more therapeutic and calm to have a peer-to-peer conversation about topics that we come up with that are relative right now to the season that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So as we came up with the topics today, there was two things that got my mind going when I was sending out some notes was I realized kind of how selfish I had been about my story and how we got together talking about home inspections. And I was like, I know what Jan was doing prior to starting homegrown home inspections, but I was like, I don't remember what the move is. Even if we talked about it, I think you were so into coaching me as I got going that I never asked the question. And you're not going to share unless I push at it. So I was like, oh, I'm going to hit Jan up for that.
All right.
And the other part too is it's HVAC season. So I was taking a Internachi class today on advanced HVAC, and I was like, perfect time to talk about it. You said it was 96 today where you're at?
96 degrees.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, let's get
Little
rolling,
warm.
man. Let's hear about how did you start, man?
All right, so I'll kind of give you the life story. So obviously I'm from Cincinnati. I left the Natty. I left Ohio in the early '90s. Spent some time up in Columbus for a couple years, and then ended up over in Europe for a couple years. I'm actually a formerly trained chef. I worked for Vail Ski Resorts as a sous chef for them on Vail Mountain, where Brian and I were talking about how I lived in Vail and he lived in Minturn. I spent 8 years and met my first wife there, working on the mountain during the winter and doing construction in the summer. And I kind of had a little bit of construction background by basically being a laborer for my dad's buddies when he was at the firehouse and, running electrical line, carrying plumbing, ripping roofs off, all that stuff. I moved to New Zealand in 2002 with my first wife, and I lived down there for approximately about 7 years. Bought my first restaurant and basically had to gut it and remodel it and got ripped off by the general contractor. During that time, I made friends and had one of my friend's fathers sign off on my hours. And I studied for the general contractors, which is a New Zealand certified builder certification. Because I had purchased a second building and I was in the process of remodeling it and gutted everything and started getting everything going, started getting quotes and realized I was going to get hammered again. Mm-hmm. So I got into that and got those up and running. So at one point I owned 3 restaurants and a pool hall and did very well with those and bought some land and we started building some houses and doing some remodeling. And my ex-wife and I split up. Came back to the United States tail end of 07, beginning 08. It was the beginning of 02 I moved down there. So came back, really not much work for, coming back to the United States from overseas for cooking or really construction, because we were going right into the housing crisis.
Yep.
Had a couple jobs lined up, didn't really pan out, moved up to Massachusetts. My best friend that I grew up with and followed the Grateful Dead around. Imagine me with long hair and a big fat beard, dreadlocks, dancing around the Saran in a purple vest. That was me back in the late 80s, early 90s. And got into sales. Still did, some handyman work for friends, did stuff like that. Helped remodel 2 restaurants while I was up there, gutting kitchens, gutting front of house, painting, all that stuff. And then started to do rather well on the sales side of it. I kind of have a gift for gab. I've always been very good at reading people and being able to talk to them. I think it's very important in our industry. Did that for about 10 or 11 years. I worked for U.S. Food Service and Cisco. Became, with both companies, I was top 5% of sales in both companies for both of them. Regionally, for 3 years straight, I was top 1% of our company down here. Got really tired of it. Working for somebody else. I always had a passion for working on homes and everything. And I really, I kind of weighed my options. I made some friends, did some contracting work for friends on the side and everything, did remodeling work, and weighed the options of getting a general contractor's license and start residential builder's license here in South Carolina and starting to buy some land and build some homes, which is a tremendous amount of money outlay. Mm-hmm. And, or doing home inspection. Now, I never really got out of the home inspection or the home construction side of it 100%. I kind of always had my toe in the water and had my foot in the water after coming back. Never really was excited to do the sales thing, but getting remarried, starting a family, you need the insurance, you need all that, and had to do it. Got comfortable to the point, had enough money tucked away, planned, budgeted, looked at everything. That there's a 3-month period during my employment down here that I was taking my courses online, was planning, setting up the company, building my templates, working on my logo, doing everything very similar to what you did. Before you left, you kind of had a plan set up. And finally started taking some inspections, went from like 5 or 6 a month to literally, doubling it the next month, to staying to about 12 or 18 a month. Now those are doing afternoons, weekends, evenings, wherever I can get to them. To the point where I was up to about 30 to 35 inspections a month. And that was about 6 months in.
Yeah.
I had networked, I had banged on doors, I had talked to people. People liked my work ethic, people liked my communication. They kind of liked the problem solving aspect of it, in the sense that, the communication with the buyers, and the fact of talking to some of the builders around here, some of the real estate agents, some of the house flippers that are down here. They realized that I had knowledge of the building industry, a pretty damn good knowledge of it. And, went from there. It's kind of, my wife always says she married the perfect man. I can build her a home, work on her car, and cook her dinner. But, unfortunately, I'm so busy right now, she's stuck cooking. I think tonight is grilled chicken and rice, and a spinach salad. I need to eat healthy in the summertime. I'm typically a terrible eater, which is part and parcel of being in the restaurant industry, just like you were. I mean, restaurant industry, it's a French fry here, a chicken tender there, a steak here. Yeah. Not very good, and eating at all crazy hours of the night. And unfortunately, my body's still set up that way. The 8 years in Colorado, when I was out there, I really did learn more in depth about various types of the industry. I spent 2 summers doing stucco and stonework, cement, stucco application, stone application, stoneworks. I spent 3 years framing during the summertime because our jobs were pretty much 8 months out of the year, 4 months. It's
Yeah.
summertime. I mean, there's jobs on the mountain, but you really don't want to be on the mountain during the summertime. You'd rather be out enjoying it. And with construction jobs, it is what it is. You work, you start early, you get done early, and you go play.
Yeah.
Um, so about 7 years ago, I got into this. Started out as a one-man show. COVID hit, business slowed down a little bit, and then it just took off.
Did,
Um,
did you guys have restrictions where they shut you down at all, or were you guys
no,
open the whole time? Yeah.
open the whole time. We're in South Carolina. Come on, man.
Yeah.
COVID
Yeah.
is just another flu to them.
Yeah. There was, I forget who was talking about it. It was a recent interview where they were like, they shut down. And I don't think we did. I started right after COVID, so it didn't affect me. Well, I mean, it affected me, but not for work from home wasn't affected by it. So,
Yeah. I mean, I remember you contacted me, and I think I was about 3.5 years in. I'm going on year 7 right now.
yeah.
So about 3.5 years in. And I think I was right at COVID when you contacted me. I think we were
Yeah.
right in the
We
middle
were,
of COVID, right at the beginning.
yeah, we were still in the practices because I remember having to like leave the office and go for a walk and talk with you as while we were on the phone. So
Yeah.
I couldn't just
Have
openly
the
have,
conversation.
yeah. So
Um,
yeah, and you were
the
just looking at your first employee at that time. You were ready just to get
Yep.
him education and stuff. That was
I was literally at the point where I either had to commit to being a single man operation and not having vacations and not taking weekends off. And, because my big thing is I have a hard time saying no. I mean, if you want to be successful in business, pick up your phone, make time for your clients, and try not to say no to your clients or
yeah,
potential clients. Be that guy. Because there's a lot of growth down here. There's a lot of opportunity. There are some people that have been down here doing this for a very long time. There's guys down here that have been doing it a very long time that are very good at their jobs. And I know it's counterintuitive for me to call and give somebody a shout out that's my competition, but one of the people down here was very supportive to me when I started and has been very supportive and sung my praises even as a competition, which is a gentleman named Brad Tholen from Horizon Home Inspections. He's absolutely a great inspector. He's a good man. He's very heavily involved in the community. He's been doing it for a very long time. He was a builder in the area. So he's got some deep roots in the area, but I have nothing but the utmost respect for him. There's a couple people out here like that I've got it, but they really pushed the industry down here. And, him and I have those conversations that, the industry's changed. To be successful, you have to be available, you have to listen. So I think I was right when you and I were talking, I was hiring somebody because I was getting to the point where I was having to say no. Hired the first guy, didn't last very long. Hired my second guy. He lasted about 2 years. Kind of struggles. My process with the inspection as a multi-inspector is everybody does their inspection. They do the inspection report. I'm the one publishing it. I have to go through and audit it, put a second set of eyes on it, check for punctuation, double check everything. Call the inspector if I see something he didn't call out. Just verify everything's solid. It's just a check and double check, verbiage being correct. Things along that lines, denoting the areas in the rooms. If I see a defect, being like, hey, you forgot to put the room on here. Just so people know.
yeah,
So it brought me to my third inspector. Hold on a second. I'm very dehydrated from today. It brought me to my third inspector, and that third inspector now has been with me for a little bit over a year and a half. And he recently entered into a sweat equity partnership agreement with me because I'm 51. Eventually, I do want to retire. It's not going to be for a while, but it gives a bite at the apple to somebody who has invested their time into this business, being the business that I started, which is essentially another child of mine. And he'll earn a significant amount of business over in 4 years. He'll be handed that percentage of the business.
Mm-hmm.
but I can't say nothing but great things about him. His name's Grant Sandell, um, 28 years old, from Iowa. I think he's from Iowa. I know he's a wrestler. Him and I are big wrestling guys. So, um, the utmost respect for him, and that brings me pretty much current to here. I just had another inspector leave recently, kind of put me in a very, very tight bind. Had everything ready for the summer so it would go seamlessly, but it's what happens in this industry, especially in restaurants and, sales and, construction, everything is you get everything lined up perfect and something falls apart. Um, so
Yeah,
now I've got,
that would happen in the maintenance world too. That we would have, I would just get six guys. We would get, one guy to the training. He gets into his first on call rotation, and then quits. You're like, well, now we got to reboot. We're not only are we going to be behind with the work, but we're now going to be 6 to 8 weeks of training behind on top of that. So
yeah. And I'm a dollars and figures guy. You know, being in the industries I've been doing, with flipping houses, buying houses, building
mm-hmm.
houses, doing the food service, everything has a dollar value to me. Just like, I look at people working for me as how much money is that person generating towards the benefit of the company as a whole, not just themselves, not just me, but as the company of the whole. And then I look at how much money have I invested into that employee over such and such amount of time. People don't realize it, but you invest when you hire somebody, you're investing in the first year in this industry $30,000 to $35,000 into them with the process that we do. And if they leave before that 1 year anniversary, like right now, it's going to cost me the training money, the salary that I paid them, the equipment, all that stuff. Even if they return the equipment, it's not brand new equipment. I can't issue it to another new inspector. It
Right,
now becomes my backup equipment. But all that money that I invest has a dollar amount. All that time, all that effort, and then you look at they leave right before the beginning of the season. Then you lose a certain amount of dollar value of income because now I've just reduced my time slots by 6 time slots in a 5-day work week,
right,
which average inspection right now I'm running is about $600. That's $3,000 times however many weeks, plus or minus 1 or 2 inspections. So,
right,
um, but that's pretty much where I came from. I mean, I tend to run my business as I would want somebody. I tend to run my business as a business person. Brad Tholen asked me, he goes, "Do you want to be a home inspector or do you want to be a owner of a home inspection company?" I said, "I want to do both." And he said, "That's the perfect answer." He's
right,
like, "Most successful people that own multi-inspector firms want to be a home inspector that owns a multi-inspector business when they have that mentality. If you just want to be a home inspector, that's fine. But if you want to be a multi-inspector thing, you have to realize that you're hands-on, but you're running a business."
right.
So, and that pretty much brings me to where I am now.
Yeah, yeah. I knew most of it. I thought I had forgotten some gaps, but we did cover it, and I was just like, man, I really felt bad. I was like, I don't know if I was so selfish about my story or thinking about starting workflow. I was like, did I really capture everything Yon did? But I'm glad I was listening to you.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's lots of nuances in between there of things
Oh
that,
yeah, 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 yeah.
I've,
Oh,
I
trust
lived
me.
in.
We could get sidetracked on so
Yeah.
many of the stories and the places, and we have, which is it was just
Yeah.
the fun part.
I
And I
mean,
think that's the part I look at too. Is often when we're chatting, I'm thinking about the stuff we learn about each other as we get to know each other more after not seeing each other for 30 years.
yeah.
And I
I
think
mean,
that's one thing that I don't know if when we were talking the other day that people realize we didn't see each other for 30 years, and then
no.
our conversations picked up and started better than you know people I have talked to in 30 years that we knew growing up. So
And sometimes that separation is actually, and I think that people will take different paths in their life to get to the same goal.
yeah,
But I think that those breaks or those nuances in relationships. I mean, you and I never had a disagreement when we were kids. I don't think
no,
we
no,
ever, we always got along.
right,
But I think the nuances and the differences, I went my path, you went your path. We still have things that we don't see eye to eye on, but
right,
that's the thing is the commonality of, agreeing to disagree, and also agreeing to agree on 99% of the things. I tell people, I say it all the time. The problem with, home inspection, real estate, the world itself, is we forget that we only disagree on about 20% of things. The other 80% we're always going to agree upon.
Right.
And that's what we need to focus on, is what we can agree upon. Understand, we're going to have our differences.
Yeah. And we're going to have different opinions. How we see stuff or view it is going to be different as inspectors and as people
Mm-hmm.
going back and forth. But, how we talk about it and how we take those, as you like to say, these bite-sized portions of the conversation.
Yep.
I feel the conversations for me, it helps me discuss with you how to form my own thoughts.
Yep.
Because I might have 6 or 7 thoughts that are going through my head. I hear your opinion, might not be 100% on board, or I am 100% on board. It's like, oh, that was what was staring me right in the face, is what Yon just said right now in the moment. Because if we're on an inspection, a lot of times you're thinking about 12 different things, putting the puzzle together of the home, and you do that reach out, and you're like, oh yeah, it's right in front of me. I think the one I was looking at termite stations that were a different color than I was used to
Oh
seeing.
yeah.
And you call me back, you're like, really, you didn't know what that was? And
I
I'm
was
like,
like, you really didn't know what that was?
it was like, yes, I know what it
Subterranean bait
was,
station.
but it was a different color, for Christ's
Yeah,
sakes.
we've got. It's funny, down here we have such a bad problem with powder post beetles and subterranean
Yeah.
termites that every house has probably about 12 to 15 of them surrounding it.
Oh wow, yeah, that's a
Either
lot.
that, or they do the deep rod into the ground and all that, and it's pretty
Right.
crazy. They drill in through the slab.
So you do your termite inspections, your wood destroying insects or
I
organisms.
don't
So
do WDO.
you
We
don't do
refuse to
WDO.
do it. Don't want the liability of it down here.
Okay.
And I
So what's that
just
process then? Do the real estate agents coordinate with somebody they work with? Do the buyers coordinate, or do you have
so
somebody you
the
refer?
reason why I have a hard time doing it is, number one, it has to be done according to the contract. You have to do a WDO inspection.
For all real
Um,
estate
all
transactions.
real estate
Okay.
transactions.
I think that's great.
Yeah, it's mandatory down here because we have such a problem, like I said, with WDO. Um, I could throw a rock out my window and hit 3 pest inspectors down here.
Okay.
That's what they do. I talk about it all the time. Let people stay in their wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And they do hundreds of them a day. Financially, if I did that, I'd probably be busier doing WDO inspection. I would probably have to have one guy just doing WDO.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think
And
that's why a lot of home inspectors end up starting pest control companies, because if it's an area like that where it's so prevalent, it makes sense to keep them busy all year round and expand the business.
and that's why I'm like, I just want to be a home inspector. I've got my niche. My niche is construction and
Yeah.
the low country homes.
Yeah.
Um, I'd say right now I was very slow on crawl spaces. Now I'm doing 3-4 crawl spaces a week.
Mm-hmm.
During the wintertime, it didn't seem that much. A lot of like slab, but I do crawl spaces. I'll do swimming pools, which I'd say I do 4 or 5 swimming pools a week. If I add termite or WDO into my inspection, it's just going to be one more thing that I'd rather focus and be the best at what I can do than try. I want to be the best at what I can do rather than trying to be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
Does that make
I get
sense?
that. It does. And that's the one thing when I did the workflow model was I knew I was going to do WDO. And, we do have termite issues. And what it's adding to the inspection time isn't horrendous. It's streamlining the process. So, new guy on the block, I wanted to stand out, and I like the education. To me, the education behind the termite was a lot of fun. I didn't like the fact I had to write a check to OSU for my training, but I still had to, because the Department of Agriculture.
Money well spent.
But the It's very interesting training. They had weird testing. I took the test before the classes. So I passed the test before even taking the classes. I had done a bunch of education online and reading the material. The material's out there to get the packets. And then they had limited test time. So I ended up in farm country of Ohio, almost towards Pittsburgh, like that far than, east
Out
and
by
north.
Martin's Ferry, where Vince took us a couple times
A
for
little
skirmishes.
north of that, but yeah, out that area. Um, but I just love the topic, and we dealt with it so much in the down in over the Rhine. And the biggest thing was that I didn't understand how the tunnels were moving with all these stone foundations and how they were moving across. And we would just see major tunnels and buildings just get chewed apart. So um, here it makes the process for the buyers a little bit more streamlined. There's still great pest control. Obviously, I'm not treating, but it did make sense to kind of add it here. Again, it is another liability, and really for what I'm doing insurance that I carry over what the state minimums are, it wasn't a big deal to keep that one even above what the state minimums were. So,
Yep.
yeah.
So let's talk about our the crazy summer coming up our way.
Yeah. Yeah. So 96 for you.
If you can't tell by the red, I've got the perfect
Oh, you're
farmer's
already
tan. Right?
getting the tan going. I don't think, let's see here with this camera. Yeah, I'm still pale.
Yeah, I still got the nice
Yeah.
farmer's tan. I'm nice and pasty here and brown here.
We still haven't turned our AC on yet.
Mine's going right now.
Yeah, at night with fans, like when we can have windows open and everything, the house is getting a little warm. We're right on that cusp of, oh, I would like the AC on. But we haven't. First part, I haven't cleaned my condensing units yet, so that's a big thing. I've got newer systems. Before I fire up the season this year, I'm gonna clean the fins outside, or I'm gonna have the installer come out and do it. I haven't decided which is gonna happen. So
I'll give you the same advice I give every one of my clients. Get yourself on a 6-month service plan. That way, if anything ever happens, you're top of the list, not bottom of the list, because you're already a customer.
yep, yep. You're not wrong on that. I still have that DIY mentality.
I I
Um,
I don't think you can actually charge an AC unit and rebuild them as well as you
no,
can.
I can't. I can't. They're brand new, so I want to take care of them. I've had them back out, but then we scheduled appointments, and this is common for a lot of people. Is as soon as we set the appointments up, what Amy's work from home schedule was switched, so there wasn't availability for her to be at home. And
Yep.
then my busy season, I went from being at home on a regular basis to be like, oh, I'll do it on a Monday. That's a good flex day for me, or Wednesday, to working every Monday the rest of the year. So it was like, if I don't, and they want to come in and do everything because we have the two systems. So you're not right. You're not wrong. Sorry, I just said you're not right. That would be a slap in the face. But you're not wrong. It's I should have them out there, um, but yeah. So what do you guys see as far as what do you guys run in for systems down there? Is it? I can't imagine there's much difference than up here.
Well, there is actually. I mean, we got a couple topics. We have a couple notes in here on our topics we're
Yeah.
going to talk about, and one of them has to do with SEER. So we're in the southern region.
Mm-hmm.
The southern region is a mandatory 15 SEER. I think where you're at is a 14 SEER.
Yep. 14.
We're 15 SEER. And that cannot be a 14 SEER with a plus one SEER variable speed fan. It has to be, the unit has to be a true 15 SEER.
Okay.
So energy efficiency is a big thing. Down here, what I see down here is, I have my preference of brands that I see, doing enough inspections down here. I know the ones that tend to, excuse the term, crap out
Mm-hmm.
during the summer.
And how
One,
many months are you guys using condensing AC down there? Sorry.
ourselves, I mean, it kind of ties into everything that we were talking about. Like, I'm very weird. My house is a smart home almost. I mean, I've got Philips Hue lights. Everything's voice controlled. I've got Nest thermostats. I've got Nest cameras, Nest ring door or Nest doorbell. Almost everything. My all my pool equipment is remote controlled. Everything is pretty much controlled by voice. Um, so we have a split system where it's AC and gas heat. Um, so we have our setup on a minimum and a maximum, and I have it set up at seasonality. So our summer seasonality settings for our thermostat start in April, and they end in October. So I would say that would be my summer season. That's when our
Oh
temperatures
wow, yeah.
vary quite a bit. And in the winter season, our heat gets turned up, our AC gets turned down, and vice versa in the summer. So meaning like in the wintertime, our AC doesn't kick on unless the house gets over 78. But our heat kicks on if it drops below 72.
Yeah.
So I don't try to like strain the system at all.
Hmm.
And during the summertime, my AC doesn't kick on unless it drops below 74. And my heat doesn't kick on unless it goes below 80.
Yeah, so you start your AC about a month earlier before us, and you're running about a month afterwards. Some people, I would say that September, October up here, we're turning our AC off, depending if you like the windows open. We're windows open people still. So
I'm a Windows open person. My wife is not. My
yeah.
wife, but I still follow my rule that every window in the house has to be open 4 times a year.
Yeah. Well, we did one thing that we do all the time that we didn't talk about. So, what does SEER stand for? Seasonal Energy Efficiency Ratio. Um, and I have a hard time explaining this, to be honest
I've
to
got it
you.
right here. I prepped for this.
Let's. I know how I would butcher it,
Okay,
so
so
let's hear
SEER.
you.
I'm quoting fact. I like to quote facts. So what is SEER for HVAC? In the
Yeah.
heating and cooling industry, SEER stands for Season Energy Efficiency Rating. A SEER rating is the ratio developed when the cooling output of the system over an average cooling season is divided by the total energy used. More simply, SEER is a representative of how much energy and money the unit requires to operate effectively over a single year. A SEER ratio is determined over the course of a full cooling season. The concept is quite simple. The less energy used by the unit to produce the proper amount of cooling, the higher SEER rating. The SEER ratio is representative of the unit's maximum efficiency. Consider the number of miles per gallon on your vehicle gets when it's running at its best. Perhaps you get 25 miles per hour on the highway. City driving, however, produces less fuel efficiency. The same is true of your air conditioner. A SEER ratio 21, for example, the unit's maximum efficiency is at its maximum efficiency and could be lowered based on varying conditions.
Yeah.
So the best way to describe it is it's cruise control. It figures out how it runs most optimally, so it doesn't. This is me reading, taking what this is.
Mhm.
It runs most optimally without drawing as much energy.
Right.
Um, Effectively, this kind of ties into our topics too, with how do I describe it? With the smart thermostats and how they learn how long it takes to cool your house. Then they shut off the AC, and then it gives it time to circulating. Siri decided to get involved because I got on about Siri. Um, uh, it turns off the compressor and it lets the fan continue to run to circulate the cool air. It's kind of, in layman's terms, it's kind of like that. It's making it so that it's using less energy to accomplish the same thing. Because the thermostat traditionally on old homes, they would run until that thermostat said that room is that temperature.
Right.
Meanwhile, that room may be that temperature, but 3 other rooms may either be hotter or cooler.
Right.
With SEER, the unit starts to learn how long it takes to get the house to that temperature, and it starts figuring out how long the compressor needs to run and how long the fan needs to run,
Yeah.
and the thermostats work in conjunction with that.
Yeah. And I think, placement of your thermostat has gotten a lot better too, where people are saying, like, guys have figured out with the more efficient systems how to better place them, just over the years and stuff.
Within 5 feet of the return.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, for some reason, like the furnace efficiencies, the ATHU reading makes more sense to me than SEER as far as explaining it. They both make
Yeah.
sense to me, not the, but it's like the efficiency of how a heat system works and, how it's, you know, using the heat from the water that's condensing in it. For some reason, just explaining that if we were talking heating season, which we're not, for some reason computes better in my head than SEER does.
No, I mean it's literally the same thing, but one's using electricity, one's using gas.
Yes, exactly.
And
Exactly.
now with some of these, high efficiency heating systems, they do wonders. They really do.
Yeah. Yeah. The up here now, we're starting to see them push a little bit of the Bosch inverter systems that they're having more, you know, they're getting more of a market. There was even offers for me to put Bosch in at the time I was doing mine. And it wasn't going to be that hateful to have the heat pump. There's some tax credits, I believe, for energy efficiency if you're going off gas from that point, which makes sense. With us not being able to go to solar and not in the long run, we still stuck with natural gas for our heating and electric on the other. And I think part of it is my own paranoia. We've had the electric go out, but we still have gas at the house, so we can run our fireplace and different things to still warm the home. So, and we like cooking with gas.
I prefer gas heating over electric 10 every day of the week.
Yeah,
I look at my system that I have at my house. So we've been here for 7 years. Our system is regularly maintained. Um, we do all the proper precautions, and this goes back to preventive maintenance, making sure checking your doing basically a checklist every year in your home.
yeah,
Basically, my unit still looks brand new.
yeah, yeah. And that's mine are, but that's the whole thing. Is even the systems I had in here, you could tell the York was from 1996, but if you looked at the fins, if you looked at everything else in the system, it just looked like an aged unit. But our efficiency in the home, the hard part is Duke's prices went up. But I'm looking at what are my kilowatts through the cooling season using last year, and I went down about 10%. And if the heating costs are going up about 30 to 40%, or cooling costs, conditioning costs, I'll take that. I'll take that 10% because I'm probably not going to capture what the energy rate went up to what my efficiency rate went down or went up.
Yep.
So,
What are you finding your defects to be when you're doing HVAC inspections? What are your things?
um, really, it's the simple things are the first part. Filters are dirty and no insulation on the line set for the condensate unit for the cooling side of things.
Do
Uh,
you on heat pumps open up the cabinet at all?
Depends on what I'm seeing out there, but you know how many heat pumps I see a year. I see it. I see if I see one heat pump a month, that's lucky. So they're becoming more
50-50
in
here.
fashion.
50-50 here.
Yeah, I had a 50-50 house the other day, so they had one in the other. So when they had two systems,
Yeah,
and
go ahead.
explain opening the cabinet what you're looking at.
So with heat pump systems, you have your condenser in actually the cabinet. So one of the reasons why I asked that is I've had a couple HVAC guys like, you shouldn't do that. Well, I don't do it while the unit's on. I make sure the unit's off first
Right.
off. But I've had to do it with a couple of units where I've seen the AC units freezing outside, or I see a tremendous amount of water coming into the pan. Or it's evident that it's not cooling at some point. I'm going to go back up and look. And I mean, I asked if you open the cabinet up. I've had a couple of HVAC guys say I shouldn't do that, but I still like to look at it because, there are the older heat pump systems when you open up that cabinet. The fins are going to be aluminum. Your condenser is going to be aluminum, but there's also copper pieces on the ends. The older units have old copper pieces on the side of it. And you can look straight down the condenser and you can actually see the galvanic corrosion starting on both sides of it. Perfect example is 3 years ago, I did an inspection on one and the outside unit was frozen. It was a York. Outside compressor was frozen like a brick of ice, and it was on heat mode. Go up into the attic and I put the flashlight down it and I'm like, those are all rusted. I guarantee she's losing all of her refrigerant because this thing's leaking like a sieve. Well, fast forward 3 months, person didn't read the report. And they're like, you didn't call out that I needed a new HVAC system. I said, I can't call out you need a new HVAC system because I don't work for an HVAC company. But I did point out that the inside of your condenser unit was rusted and there was a massive amount of water coming out and the actual compressor was frozen. And I recommended that you contact a qualified and licensed HVAC professional.
Right.
So I did my due diligence, and then she sends me a picture of the unit, the condenser pulled out of the cabinet, and it's everything I took a picture of exactly, except it's out of the cabinet. So
yeah,
that's why I asked if you actually open the cabinets up on any of it.
It depends on what if I'm seeing corrosion in so when we're talking about the cabinet, we're going kind of backwards from inside and outside. So the inside air handler, we're looking at the coil where the coolant is now in the chill factor and blowing the cold air through inside the home in the air handler. So that water a lot of times is very acidic, and then you'll see corrosions and leaks inside. So if I want to see if it's old and I can open it easily, if we're talking a few sheet screws where I'm
6
not being
screws.
invasive, yeah. If it's not a huge and there's working room, and it's going to tell me more about how to describe the system to the client, then I'm going to do it if there's something to see. If it's a really old dated system and it's in bad condition, I'm probably just going to move on and say, hey, I'm not getting in there. But
That's exactly my point.
The other part too is how can you stop, if you can prevent something from getting worse or expedite to get the repair done quicker, it could be that sense. Because like if you have, I did a home where the panel was a little off. It was running when I left, but it was vibrating. It was an older system, and then the panel has the door has a switch to shut it off if the cover comes off. Well, that cover vibrated loose based on how bad the system was. They come home, it's 80 degrees in their home. They're like, what did you do to my system? And I'm like, check the panel cover just to see if I did it loosen up. And sure enough, they tightened it. He's like, oh yeah, we keep stuff in front of it normally. I'm like, don't do that.
I always love it when they tape it.
Yeah. Oh, and it's
the panel cover switch.
And I'm assuming that's the service guys that are doing that and not taking it off. Yeah. So
yeah, I fixed it for you. I put tape on it.
Yeah. So
that'll be $300.
But yeah, if I can look at something to make sure that they understand the severity of it, so that they can still have comfort. My luck, I don't want to have somebody who's susceptible to heat have a 90-degree heat because of me not taking one extra step to go a little bit further. So.
Yeah. With us, we're generally calling out water and pan because condensation lines haven't been cleaned in 4 years. Again, that goes back to preventive maintenance.
Yeah.
Things along that line, disconnected float switches, which if anybody has a HVAC unit that has a pan underneath it, do not cut the wires with the little float switch, because if your HVAC condensation line ever stops, your overflow is going to flow into your ceiling of your home.
Yeah.
Those are the common things we see. I mean, I see that type of stuff. I see gas lines not secured for split systems. I'm seeing grommets missing from the connection inside the cabinet, flex line entering inside of a cabinet, all these things that go into it. But, for most part, the one thing I could say is, a lot of the stuff that I find is very, very minor. And if it's an older unit, I'm already going to call it out for it being beyond the average life expectancy.
Right. Right. Yeah. I'm looking forward to this time of year when we start seeing the frozen units, when they start running in dirty filters, when people are blowing their lawn debris at their condensing unit and not cleaning it up. Dirty operations is not great, not changing your air filter. And I would have this, I know what we did in apartment management. And I heard another podcast this week talking about, what filter to put in. So I like a nice pleated, higher rated MERV rating on a filter. For one, I've got pets. I want to keep stuff out of the system. But there's the philosophy that you hear from, not to be ageist, but older ones saying, just put the cheapest blue filter in that's just, barely a filter so you don't put stress on the system. And I have my opinion on it. I think it's fine having a MER filter in that is 8 to 11. I think when you get up into the super higher ones, you might have that problem. But what's your thoughts? What are you seeing down there? You guys have much longer.
I actually have one in my closet. I can't reach it because my desk is in the way, or I'd hold it
Yeah,
up right now. I use a pretty high MERV filter. My house is 7 years old. I see enough insides of HVAC units and look at the squirrel cage in there, which is actually the fan. That's what I call a
right.
squirrel cage,
Yep, that's
or a hamster wheel, whatever you want to call it.
mm-hmm.
That they're just coated with
Mm-hmm.
so much stuff. And a very gross fact that people don't realize is, what is 80% of dust?
Your skin.
Dead skin. Personally, I don't want to breathe in dead skin. I have 2 dogs and a cat. I have an 11-year-old daughter. My house is party central for the 11-year-olds. They all come over here and hang out.
Mm-hmm.
So I have mine on a reminder every 2 months. I change mine, change mine out.
Right.
The whole thought of it puts more strain on the unit. Well, it will if you don't change it.
You
It's
got to
going to
change it.
eventually. It's going to clog.
Yeah.
But people would say, "Oh, I'll put the cheapest one in there and change it out every month." I can tell you right now, anybody's putting a cheap filter in is not remembering to change the filter out every month. I don't care who you are, and if you do, you're doing it for 6 months out of the year, not 12 months out of the year.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely like, I could see in the older apartments where it was hard to get up to if you're relying on tenants to change. If you have the blue, more crap's just going to pass through the system, which is not good for your unit.
How many houses have you walked into that have a funky smell to them?
Oh,
As soon as the
you
heat
mean,
turns on, as
hold
soon as
on,
the
just
AC
today?
turns on.
Just today?
But I mean, as soon as you turn the heat on, as soon as you turn that cooling on, people don't realize what that is the system, when it goes heat, burning off the particulates. What you're smelling is dead skin cells, dead hair, burnt hair, all that stuff. Any
Yeah.
type of biological growth that's on there that naturally occurs. Same thing with the heating system. First time it goes through that coil, same thing. The higher filter not only is going to, filters everything out, it's going to keep your house smelling better.
Yeah. And the biggest part is you have a reminder in your system. I have the same thing too. It's in my calendar. It probably even shows up now in Spectora with my because I have my calendar. I linked my Google one.
Yep.
That I got to change it, and I still write the date of when I changed it, just because I did have the HVAC guy out because we had, after the new system was put in, we didn't have AC. It was heat season when I had everything replaced. First part of AC season, they were out, and then a few weeks later, we had a low refrigerant issue from the new setup. We ran new line sets and everything. Very common problem because when you add refrigerant to the system, depending on what the temperature is outside, you might not get a full load as they put it in. It's got to expand and contract. So they came out to top it off, and they looked at the filter, and I had the date on it, and it actually was a little dirtier than we expected. It had only been in 2 versus 90 days. It was on the just barely 2 months in there. And whether it's just from the winter, the pets, the cats, or whatever, I was like, oh my God, that's disgusting. Change it now. But it was still dated. And the HVAC guy knew that, hey, it stayed up on his filter. It hadn't been up there for 3 months, no matter what the color is. So,
Well, we were talking about the thermostats. I can say this to everybody: if you can, get yourself a programmable thermostat. I use Nest. We make no money off of plugging products here,
Right.
or websites or anything like that. So just realize we're just giving our personal preferences. This is our experiences. People are going to find something that works for them. There's multiple out there. You got Nest, you got Ecobee, you got Vivian, you've got
Yeah.
all these other ones. I use Nest because it ties into everything that I use. I have a dual zone system on a single unit. So my Nest actually has geofencing on it. So when I'm away, it goes into eco mode, which means that my AC won't kick on unless it gets over 80, and my heat won't kick on unless it gets below 68. And I also can track when it turns on, how many hours it runs, all that stuff. I can track all that. I can tell you right now, this past winter, my upstairs unit ran on average probably 30 to 40 minutes a day, and my downstairs unit ran an hour and a half a day. And the reason being is cold air settles. That's why my downstairs unit runs. I can tell you during the winter, that's going to be or in the summer, that'll be flip flopped.
Mm-hmm.
But it gives me the ability. It took me a couple months to figure out where the sweet spot was on my temperatures.
Mm-hmm.
But down here, as I tell everybody, we're not fighting heat, we're fighting humidity. You can run your AC all day. If it's humid out, you're still going to be hot. Big thing for me is if you have HVAC and you're still warm when your house is 74 degrees, buy a ceiling fan, circulate that air. That is the big thing. And one of the deaths of most systems down here is also people like to leave their system set on 67, 68, 69 degrees, which I'm like, why are you an Eskimo? Because in the wintertime, you're complaining about how cold it is, because down here in the South, your blood thins out.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. The programmable thermostat, I just have the base Honeywell that's the programmable based on the time of the day, is how we set it. I don't vary my temperature that much. Just we have open floor plan and the pets are here. And what I want to have is some consistency that the system isn't trying to catch up. So to run for a longer period of time, because I went from, say in the winter, I'm keeping it at 68 in the winter. I don't want it to drop down to 62 and then lose all that energy and conditioned air in the home. So fluctuating it between 64, 65, depending on for the upstairs system, that I can fluctuate that one a little bit more because heat's rising from my downstairs furnace. But figuring out that fluctuating about 4 degrees keeps me, 4 degrees is about the max I want to do through like the longer sleep or time periods not being from the home. And then I step it up, gradually from the time we're home.
Well, one of the things I can say about that, Brian, is with the learning thermostats, which is what the Nests are, it actually doesn't run the compressor the whole time it's bringing the temperature up.
True. Yeah, where the programmable.
It'll kick out the cold air and then it'll shut itself off and let everything circulate.
Yeah. Yep. Well, now I'm going to have to go buy a Nest, John.
The other thing is this too. I mean, like things like the Ecobee, which I deal a lot with out in the new construction area. They actually are a smart thermostat. And let's say somebody's got a single zone system. Well, Ecobee sells a remote thermostat for like a room that typically gets cold or hot.
Right.
Now, it's not going to put a damper on your system and make it so it heats up that room, but you can actually use it so that the system can use the law of averages, or it can actually heat that room up during the time of days that you want it heated or cooled. So, a lot of these smart thermostats have great little bells and whistles on them. Again, I'm not trying to plug anything, but the thing is like there are huge advantages. The old days of the mercury bulb thermostat, which I had in my house until I was probably 17 years old, because my dad was cheap. Like literally those days are gone.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, working with the different thermostats is not a problem for me at home. It was just kind of I don't want to think about the extra technology when I'm at home. That's my cutoff point. It's like, it's even how I fish. If I fish, sometimes I want to fly fish. I don't want to be spin casting and on a boat with GPS finder and everything. Just want to stand in the
Now you're
stream.
taking a knock at me on my new boat, aren't you?
maybe. So
This again, this goes back to like the beginning of our conversation for everybody listening is like Brian and I are not always going to agree about everything. I mean, I could sit here right now and turn every light on in my office and not even move.
right.
I'm a smart home guy. Brian's not. It's just, we're going to have our differences. We really are. But the similarities about our final outcome are what matters.
Right. And I mean, I appreciate the smart home stuff. It's all about what me as the final end user, what I'm deciding to do. So, when we had to do systems for our office buildings down there, everything was Nest and how to program it. And they're like, who do we get to program the system? It was me doing the programming for it. Like, same thing with the access controls, the cameras, and how everything goes. Like, I love the technology. I think that's why I don't do it at home sometimes. Is because I'm doing it so much throughout the day. I'm like, I'm going to step back a little bit. But
So,
yeah, so 96 today for you.
what about you?
We were in the 70s, maybe got up to 80s. I didn't really look. It wasn't bad. But we
But you
did
had
have
tornado warnings yesterday.
we had some serious thunderstorms. It was like hours of lightning and thunderstorms coming through. And well, this kind of ties in for my hatred of technology. Um, we have newer smoke detectors through the house, and we do get stink bugs. And in the middle of a thunderstorm, I've got a Labrador who won't leave my side because there's a thunderstorm going on. So River is right by my side, going, "Hello, hi, can I sleep on top of you because it's scary outside." Um, and then a stink bug got into the top floor smoke detector, and that will trip off the entire house around 10:30. My wife just got to sleep, and we have ones that talk to us, fire, fire. We have,
I have the same thing.
yeah. And then so I'm running up to the third floor. I go to that one first because it's usually the culprit. Sure enough, stink bug in there. I'm like, you bastard. I take that one out, go to the wife. I fixed it. We'll, you know, vacuum tomorrow and we'll make sure that, we don't have a problem. About 20 minutes later, another one's going off. I have no idea what happened with the smoke alarm, but 7 smoke alarms later, everyone was out in the house.
Oh,
There
wow.
wasn't a fire, but I don't know if it was humidity or what was causing them.
Might be because of the amount of lightning, maybe the ozone in the air.
I have no idea, but yeah, it was. I mean, the lightning was steady for hours, like for at least 2 to 3 hours of watching just a flash show in the sky.
I
And
miss that. I miss the summertime thunderstorms in Ohio
yeah,
because people get scared of storms. I actually like
I
how
like the weather.
it reminds me of how small we actually are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'm building a patio, so I now have a moat around the backside of my house because I've got a dugout area, and
Oh
it's
my god!
rained. It has rained nonstop, at least somewhat every day, for most every day for the last 2 weeks since I've had excavated it out. So there's literally from last night's rain, I have a moat around the back of my
How
house. So
deep?
it's about 3 inches, and in some areas it's gone down. Um, but I can see all the low spots before I do my final grading, and
Hey,
so but I had a bridge I did with plywood going across for the dogs, so they wouldn't track the mud in, and it was underwater this morning.
I was like, that didn't stay.
Nope, it was underwater this morning. So
Well, I think it's about our time.
It is, yeah. We got a little
So
sidetracked there at the end, but that's fine.
no, that's fine.
Yeah,
That's why we do this. I mean, the whole idea is to still have fun doing this.
yeah,
Um, well, thank everybody. Be on the lookout for us. We'll repost the podcast we did earlier this week. This is 2 in a week, so if
yep,
you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Brian or myself. Our contact information is in the details below here. Like and follow our page. Not looking to monetize, but if you could increase who watches this and actually how quickly it comes up, it's for the benefit of everybody. Again, we're stronger as a team than we are as a group of individuals.
and if there's a topic you'd like to hear from us chat about, let us know. We'd be glad to talk about it. We're even discussing having some guests on, different people in the industry. We'll see how we pull that together, just to keep people engaged, because there's only so much you can hear Jan and I talk. So,
My wife says I could talk too much. I
yep,
guess it's because I'm home or I'm out working by myself all day.
yep. When you come home, you want to chat. So I get it. I get it.
All right,
Great.
guys. Well, you guys be safe and look forward to seeing you soon.
Have a great evening.